Get the little closer. Oops. All right, Krishna. So thank you all for coming. It's my first time in Sydney, and this is the first time I visited this temple. Although I've heard about it, of course, for many, many years. Today is a disappearance day, Srila Prabhupada, 2018. So, of course, we're going to speak about Prabhupada. And are there cartels here? I can change this for a moment.
Yeah, I guess that's the second. Makes it a little better. Yeah, it is better.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Vedanta Swami Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhipa Satyadesha Dharine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Jaya Prabhupada So, I would like to speak on the mantras we just chanted. Namo Vishnu Padaya Namaste, and actually explain word for word exactly what they mean. You already know that, but we could always hopefully find new inspiration. So it begins with Nama, Nama Om. Nama in Sanskrit, often we translate it, offer my humble obeisance, bow. So Nama Om, and Om, of course, is invoking the Supreme Lord. Om, by chanting Om, the mantra immediately becomes, you could say, Krishna-centric. That we're not simply chanting a mantra, but we're specifically connecting with the Supreme Lord, in this case through his pure devotee. So Nama Om, and bowing, of course, is submission. This is a universal gesture, universal bodily movement that one bows, one lowers oneself before a superior. You find this throughout world culture, throughout history. And the word Namaha, if you don't mind a little Sanskrit grammar, just hang in there because later you'll get to eat. It's nam, the Sanskrit verb nam actually means exactly the same thing as bow. If you think of the word bow and the same word, but which we pronounce differently, bow, like a bow, And so despite the different pronunciation, it's really the same word. So to bow is to curve your body. And that's what nam means. The verb nam means to curve, to bow. For example, from the same root, the Sanskrit word namra means something which is curved, like a bow. And so submission, which Krishna talks about in the Gita, tadvidhi pranipatena, that learn this truth from enlightened souls. And Krishna says pranipatena. Pranipata is the word. Pranipatena means by pranipata. Actually describes a physical motion. Because pra in Sanskrit means something like forward, and ni means down, and pata means falling. So you just go, because when you bow, you go forward and down and fall. I mean, don't injure yourself, but that's what Krishna describes, pranipatena. And that's what namaha is. Nama Om, and then Vishnu Padaya. Vishnu Pada, unto Vishnu Pada. That's what the Padaya is, the dative form in Sanskrit. It means unto. So unto Vishnu Pada. So Vishnu Pada can mean several things, which are all related. For example, it can mean one who is at the feet of Vishnu, that I bow to one who, in other words, has submitted to Vishnu. This is very important because we're bowing to someone who himself or herself has bowed to the Lord. And so we're not bowing to someone who wants to control us, who wants to possess us, but rather we're bowing to someone precisely because that person, in a more pure way, as they say in Hollywood, timing is everything. So we are bowing to someone who has, in this case, Prabhupada himself, in a more, Vishaka, Hare Krishna. In a more powerful way, has bowed to the Lord. So ultimately, the reference point, the absolute point, is Krishna or God. It's just like, for example, on Earth, if you say that Sydney is north of Melbourne, that can only be true in reference to a fixed North Pole. If there's no North Pole, it would be meaningless to say that anything is north of anything else. And so the reference point is God, is Krishna. So if someone, and as Aristotle said, as a self-evident logical truth, things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. So because Prabhupada has surrendered to Krishna through his guru, which comes in the next mantra. Because Prabhupada has surrendered to his guru, by surrendering to him, we are surrendering to Krishna. Now, a word about surrender, the English word surrender, which is used to translate often the Sanskrit word prapadyate. And so surrender, when you say surrender, you can have this image of the end of World War II, battleship in the harbor of Japan, and people surrendering, like, we give up, and we have no rights, we have to do whatever you say because we surrender. So the word surrender translates a Sanskrit word often, prapadyate. Pra, again, as in pranipata, means forward or forth, to go forth. And pad is to go, actually, because that's why the word pada means foot, because it's the goer, the foot goes. And so prapadyate literally means to approach, to go toward, to go forth. Prabhupada gave the example that if you want to approach the sun, you must become fire. Because the idea here is that when you approach something which is so powerful, you must become like that thing in order to approach it. So just as you have to become fire if you approach the sun, you have to become godly if you approach God. And so to surrender really means to approach. Because if you approach someone that powerful, it's understood if you keep going, you don't turn back. Because as you approach Krishna, as they say, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So as you're approaching Krishna, you start to become Krishnized, Krishna conscious by the power of Krishna. And so at every step of our spiritual journey, you can either turn back or stay where you are and catch your breath, or you can again go forward. But going forward means you're approaching something which is infinitely more powerful than you and therefore is going to transform you. So the very act of approaching is an act of submission, knowing who you're approaching. So Namo Vishnu Padaya. So Vishnu Pada can mean that Prabhupada is at Krishna's feet. Pada also can mean, because it can also mean a position or a place, as in the famous verse from the Rig Veda. Tad Vishnu Paramang Padam Sada Pashyanti Suraya. The Suris, the saintly persons, the godly persons, Sada, always, Pashyanti, are looking at or gazing at Tad Vishnu Paramang Padam, that supreme abode of Vishnu. So there, maybe just a word on the Rig Veda. If you're just a sort of a philological bean counter, to be a bean counter is kind of an expression which means someone who just counts up, there's more of this than that, with no concern for quality, with no concern for ultimate meaning. It's just like there are more, let's say, bus drivers than atomic scientists, so bus drivers are more important. It's actually, if you're a bus driver, I mean, no offense. I mean, where would we be without bus drivers? But still, bean counting means that you just count the numbers with no concern for the relative importance or value of things. And so in the Rig Veda, overwhelmingly, the winner in terms of most verses is Lord Indra, because there are more verses to Indra. But as one great scholar in the 20th century, a Dutch scholar actually, Kuiper, pointed out that if you look at the verses which are dedicated to Vishnu in the Rig Veda, they are special, they're extraordinary, and no other deity in the Rig Veda is worshipped in that way. Because the idea of Paramang Padam, a supreme abode, a supreme position, a supreme place of Vishnu, is a unique statement. It's sort of a unique transcendent moment in the Rig Veda, which otherwise is largely concerned with Karmakanda. Also, we find in the Yajurveda something said about Vishnu, which is not said about any other deity, which is Yagyo by Vishnu, the sacrifice. And the 4 Vedas are just about sacrifice. They're all about the Vedic sacrifice. Each name of the Veda describes what that book is. So the word Rig, or Rig in Sanskrit, means hymn. So the Rig Veda is the hymn book. And the Yajur means the sort of techniques of sacrifice and what the sacrifices mean. That's the word Yajur. So Yajur Veda means the Veda that gives that, and so on and so forth. So because all 4 Vedas, and the Sama Veda tells you how to chant the hymns which have such power. And so because all the Vedas are about sacrifice, to say the sacrifice is Vishnu is to say that this whole operation we're conducting here is really all about Vishnu. And Krishna says in the Gita, Vedai Sasavara, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. So anyway, therefore, this to call someone Vishnu Pada, someone who stands in the, or it could mean someone who's at the feet of Vishnu, the Lord. The word Vishnu, by the way, is usually etymologized as from the Sanskrit root Vish, which means to enter or penetrate, and it means the all-pervading Lord, Vishnu. So Vishnu Pada can mean one who is at the feet of Vishnu, or one who stands in the place of Vishnu, in other words, represents Vishnu in this world. And to use the term Vishnu Pada, which is used in our Vaishnav line, is really a reference to the Rig Veda, the oldest Veda, where it said Tad Vishnu Paramang Padam, the supreme Pada, or pada of Vishnu. That saintly people are always looking toward that. That is their goal. That is their destination. So therefore, to call a Mahabhagavat, a great devotee, Vishnu pada, is very significant. It's very significant. How you doing? That person is standing in the place of Vishnu, and because to stand at the feet, these two meanings really, one logically implies the other. Because if you yourself are at the feet of Vishnu, that means that whatever you're doing it because Vishnu wants you to do it. Because otherwise, what does it even mean to say you're at the feet? Just like we talk about serving the feet of the guru. It doesn't mean necessarily to give the guru a pedicure. So even to understand, like, what does it mean to serve the feet? To understand this constant reference to feet, like serve the feet and worship the feet and everything, to understand what this even means, or Vishnu pada, Namam Vishnu padaya, you also have to understand that Vedic culture, and you see this very powerfully in the Bhagavatam, is committed to a type of sacred symbolic physiology or anatomy. So that because the feet are the lowest part of the body, so low means low, and your feet, you're walking around. A lot of people used to go barefoot or wear sandals, which sandals will not keep your feet clean in a muddy environment. And so the feet are the lowest part of the body, so they symbolize. So to serve the feet means to serve a person in the most humble way. So it really symbolically means humility. And the head also has powerful symbolic value. For example, when Arjuna and Krishna arrested Ashwatthama for his terrible crimes, heinous crimes, and brought him back to the Pandava camp, and Draupadi said, "Muchate, muchata yesha," like, let him go. And Bhima said, "Kill him," because he's committed atrocities. And this is very interesting. One interesting point about this in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, is that you have two pure devotees, Draupadi and Bhima, who disagree on, you could say, mundane ethics. So often devotees will say, well, what's the Vedic position on this or that? Or what's the Vedic position on, I don't know, holograms or something? But the point is that in terms of mundane or just worldly morality, pure devotees can disagree. They can have different positions. It's not an absolute thing. Like when Krishna says, surrender to me, that's an absolute truth, that the soul should surrender to Krishna. But here you have Bhima and Draupadi disagreeing. Let him go, kill him. And so Krishna is in the middle here, and he has to somehow or other do the right thing, but also satisfy two pure devotees. And it's very interesting what he does. He gives Ashwatthama this terrible punk haircut. He cut his hair off, and in doing so cut off his crown jewel, literally his crown jewel. But what's interesting here is that in this world, this Vedic world of powerful symbolic anatomy, that was like killing him. In fact, the Bhagavatam then says that you don't physically kill a Brahmin, but you symbolically kill him by acts such as these. So the head also has tremendous symbolic meaning, just like the feet do. Another example is, how Draupadi was dragged into a men's gambling hall, which was already a great offense, and then offended there. Now, what's interesting is, we of course know the very popular story that Draupadi, the Kurus attempted to unrobe her. Krishna saved her and protected her honor. Now, what's interesting is the Bhagavatam, which gives all the headlines of the Mahabharata. The Bhagavatam many times gives all the important events of the Mahabharata, and five times the Bhagavatam mentions the offense to Draupadi in the gambling hall, and all 5 times it says the offense was touching her hair. For example, in one verse in the Bhagavatam says, Kacha Sparsha Hatayusha, that the Kurus because sparsha means touching, because they touched her kacha, her hair, therefore they destroyed their own duration of life. And they would soon die. And it's even said that Krishna, Draupadi cursed them to die for that because that was such a terrible offense to touch her head. It's interesting culture. And she cursed them to die. And the Bhagavatam says when Krishna heard about Draupadi's curse, Krishna said that he would enforce it. So anyway, there are many things we could say, but I just want to give an idea of the powerful symbolic anatomy you find in the Bhagavatam. And this extends even to Krishna. For example, you find in the Rig Veda, which is then again repeated in the Bhagavatam, that the universal form of the Lord, the Virat Rupa, this sort of cosmic form of the Lord, which is an object of meditation, actually symbolizes all the different components of the universe. So the entire universe is mapped onto the anatomy of the cosmic form of the Lord. The different social classes, the different vocational classes, the planetary systems are mapped onto the Lord's anatomy. So again, you see the symbolic power of anatomy. So then we go back to this verse, Namo Vishnu Padaya. So Prabhupada is at the feet of Vishnu, but when you're at the feet of someone, in other words, when you fully surrender to someone, submit to them, you become a transparent representative. If you're, let's say, the Australian ambassador in America and the government tells you this is our position, you say, I don't think so. That's not a good idea. So you say something else because you were not fully submissive to your boss. Therefore, you don't really, at that point, you're not really speaking to the government, and the government will issue a statement saying this sort of rogue ambassador is not really speaking for us. So to be fully submissive to someone means you become a transparent representative of that person. And therefore, the two grammatical meanings of Vishnu Pada, to be at the feet of Vishnu or to stand in the place of Vishnu, are really, one logically entails the other. So, Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya. Okay, in Sanskrit you have adjectives and comparative degree and superlative degree, such as Priya. Priya in Sanskrit means dear, and Prayas means very dear, and Preshta means most dear. For those of you who are historical linguistics fans, in English, we still make the superlative degree from Sanskrit with ST, best, finest, prettiest, lousiest. So we make the superlative degree by adding ST at the end of a word, that's Sanskrit, as in Preshta, which means the superlative degree of dear. And of course, it's simply translated most dear to Krishna. So Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, on the earth. Tala means something like surface, so literally on the surface of the earth, because there's all kinds of strange things going on inside. So just to clarify, Bhutala is a common expression meaning like on the surface. So Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate. Sri means beauty. It can mean great fortune. And the Sanskrit suffix mat, not to be confused with a street dog, but the Sanskrit suffix mat is identical to the other suffix vat, as in Bhagavat, as in Bhagavad Gita, one who possesses, which becomes, anyway, the nominative singular, masculine, Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is just vat, declined, or anyway. So Bhagavat. So the same as vat is mat. So Srimat. Just like you from Bhagavat, you get Bhagavan. So from Srimat, one who possesses Sri, you get Sriman. That's where it comes from. And when you take Srimat, the way you make the feminine form of Srimat, you add a long I at the end, so it becomes Srimati. which in the West is Srimati. It's kind of awful, but that's the way it is. So, anyway, so here we have Srimate. Srimat means one who possesses Sri, great fortune and spiritual beauty. And in the dative form, mean like unto, it's Srimate. Means unto the one who is Srimat. So Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Iti in Sanskrit is quotation marks. It's often translated thus, but that's how you put in quotation marks in Sanskrit. So to say Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti means who is, I bow to one who is quote unquote Bhakti Vedanta Swami. So that's like a direct quotation. That's his name. Or in English, you might, for example, put it in italics to indicate it's a proper name. So that's what the iti is doing there. So Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin, even the word Swami, I'll explain that. Why not? It's, if you can't take this much grammar, you can tap out. Anyway, but I thought you might be interested to know what you're saying every day. Swamin is a combination of two items. Swa in Sanskrit means one's own. And we still have it in all the Romance languages. For example, in Portuguese, to say one's house would be sua casa. So the same word, swa. In Spanish, it's su for swa. In French, it's son or sa. In Italian, it's suoa or suo. So the Sanskrit swa is found in all the Romance languages with exactly the same meaning, one's own. So min in Sanskrit, another interesting little suffix to make a little collection. These are collectible Sanskrit suffixes. So min also means one who possesses, just like much. So swamin, which then when it's a subject of the sentence becomes swami. But swamin literally means one who is self-possessed or has one's own. And so it comes to mean Lord. Because if you look at traditional social structures, especially in pre-industrial, pre-secular societies, really everyone stands in a relationship, subordinate relationship to the ruler. So if you have a king, then you have nobles like earls and dukes and all that. And then below them you have minor nobles, and then you have commoners. And so the idea is everyone stands in a relationship in which they have certain obligations to someone above them. But someone who possesses their own power, possesses their own right, possesses their own property in the sense that it's not that I have this land, but ultimately I'm responsible to use this land or pay taxes on this land to my superior. So one who has their own property and autonomy as a lord is swamin. That's actually what the word means. And it means Lord, as in Jagannatha Swami. And so, interestingly, at a later time in Indian history, it comes to be applied to sannyasis. You will not find, say in the Mahabharata or Bhagavatam, this much older Sanskrit, you won't find sannyasis called Swamin or Maharaja. Maharaja, great king, was a literal term for great kings, not for sannyasis. If you know Sanskrit, it gets a little strange sometimes. People call me great king, like, okay. Anyway, so Bhaktivedanta Swamin. So Prabhupada, so how is this word Swamin, which means Lord, how is it applied to a pure devotee? Well, in one sense, because he is our Lord, in the sense that he has the power to command us, because we have chosen to accept him as the pure representative of the absolute truth. And therefore, exercising our own free will in pursuit of our rational self-interest, we have accepted Prabhupada as our Lord. So, in that sense, he's Swami. And also because he knows that everything belongs to Krishna, whatever he apparently possesses, he possesses appropriately in the sense that he knows that it belongs to Krishna. By the way, the word Krishna uses in the Gita several times to indicate that one is free from possessiveness is nir mama, which literally means no mine. Mama means mine, And so no mind, like you have no sense of mind, nirmama, which we translate free of possessiveness. So Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namine just means unto one so named. Nama means name in Sanskrit, like in Harinama. Namin means one who has a name. So iti namine, I bow unto the one who has the name Bhaktivedanta Swami. Then the next mantra is Namaste, which literally means I bow to you. I bow to you. Namaste Saraswati. Saraswati, reference to Prabhupada's guru, Saraswati, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And you want to know what Saraswati means?
Yes.
Okay. Put more coins in the meter. Saras actually means a current, like the current of a river. And like Sarovara. Anyway, Bindu Sarovara. And Vati, you know Vat. Vat is one who possesses, as in Bhagavat. The feminine is Vati. So it's not Saraswati, it's Saraswati. Then the river that possesses many currents. That is Saraswati, but of course Saraswati is a goddess of learning. And so Bhaktisiddhanta earned this title, Saraswati, because he was so learned, and Prabhupada, being a servant and follower of his guru, is called Saraswati. Namaste Saraswati Devi. And Devi, Deva. Deva, which literally means God, it comes from the Sanskrit root div, which we still have in English, by the way, in words like divine. And so Deva literally means a divine being or a god. And it comes to be used in Sanskrit as a suffix. So Guru Deva means spiritual teacher. Because in India, your wrestling coach is Guruji. Or if you have a teacher that teaches you, I don't know, horticulture, that's Guruji. And so when you want to specify that this is not just a wrestling coach or a grammarian, to avoid that possible confusion, then you put the suffix deva at the end, which means spiritual teacher, spiritual master, Guru Deva. So Saraswati Deve means Prabhupada is a divine being, a spiritual being. And Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaura Vani Pracharine. Vani, of course, means message. Gaura's message, Lord Chaitanya's message. Pracharine. Pracharine, Sanskrit is very interesting, actually. At least I think it is. Chara, the verb chara in Sanskrit means to move. And so charita means like the movements or the activities. And so, for example, the nectarian activities or movements of the Lord are called Chaitanya Charita Amrita. So chara means to move in many senses. For example, Krishna says in the Gita, Indriyanang hi charatang, as the senses are moving about, janmano navidiyate, even one of the senses in which the mind becomes trapped can tarasya hariti pragyam, can literally steal away from us our higher understanding. If you become, even one of your senses becomes obsessed with or fixed in some inappropriate object. So it can also mean grazing, like cows grazing. And so Krishna, in a sense, is saying as the senses are grazing, because that's what our senses do. You know, if you're just like an ordinary person, you're not a serious spiritual practitioner, then you walk out the door and you're kind of looking around. Your eyes are kind of grazing, looking for green pastures, or your ears are listening for nice sounds. So, but charita can also mean just moving. And pra, the same sort of handy prefix, pra, it means forth. So moving forth is pracharati, means something moves forth. But then when you put the long A, prachara, it has a causative sense, which means to make something go forth. And prachari is the one who makes Lord Chaitanya's message, in this case, go forth. So it's all actually very logical Sanskrit grammar. So pracharin is one who does this, and pracharine, just like Srimate, means unto the one. So Gauravani Pracharine literally means unto the one who makes Lord Chaitanya's message go forth. And of course we translate as preaching. So Gauravani Pracharine and then Nirvishesha. These are also very important words. In Sanskrit, Vishesha, or very, very closely related word, Visheshana, is a Sanskrit word for adjective. Adjectives distinguish nouns. For example, you say man, which man? The tall man, the short man, the evil man, the good man, the confused man, the angry man, or whatever. So the adjectives make distinctions. That's what an adjective does. It tells you, if you use a noun like, a man, a woman, a house, a tree, and so which tree, which house, which woman, which man, that's what an adjective tells you, which one. So an adjective distinguishes, and therefore, and so the Sanskrit word for adjective is vishesha, or visheshana. So to be near vishesha, near means not, or without, like nirvana, without vana. Near vishesha means someone who cannot make proper distinctions. Someone who cannot make proper distinctions is called nirvishesha shunyavadi. So the vadi, which means an advocate of something. Vada means speech, and vadi means one who uses or has a certain speech, and so it has a sense of advocating, one who's advocating something. And so nirvishesha vadi is one who advocates that there are no distinctions. In other words, impersonalism. So what are the distinctions? For example, between God and ordinary souls. There's a distinction. So one who denies the distinction, the difference between God and an ordinary soul is called nirvishesha, body. Another distinction is between spirit and matter. So a person who claims that Krishna's body is material, again, slipped on the banana peel, that is again nirvishesha vadi, one who is not making appropriate distinctions. And so ultimately, and to explain this word nirvishesha, which Prabhupada put in his pranam mantra, you have to understand another Sanskrit word. You don't mind all this philosophy, do you? There are no refunds, but. So you have to understand another important Sanskrit word, which is tattva. Tattva, what that word really means. For example, in the Bhagavatam, there's a famous verse, Vedanti tattva vidas. Those who know tattva say that there are different tattvas. Or Krishna says in the Gita, try to learn. Actually, what he literally says is know the truth. Vidhi, tadvidhi, is just the imperative of the verb of vid, to know, like Veda. So vidhi just means know. Know that spiritual knowledge. And he says that you should approach people who are tattva darshina, who have seen tattva. We translate that seers of the truth, which is, the correct translation. But there are different words for truth in Sanskrit, and Krishna has used a specific word which has special meaning. It doesn't just mean like tell the truth, don't lie. So you have to understand when Krishna says that upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshana, those who know, those who have seen tattva, will give you the knowledge. So what is tattva? And also, and you'll see it comes back to nirvishesha. You can't really understand what nirvishesha means unless you understand in a more profound way what tattva means. Because nirvishesha is actually referring to tattva, as I'll explain. So the word tattva is tattva, no surprise there. But tat in English, if you just put an H after the T, it's English, that. And that in Sanskrit is tat, it's the same word. English just added an H for some, strange proclivity to bite your tongue when you say words in English like that. But tat, so tat grammatically is a demonstrative pronoun, or that. It means, it's a word which points something out. It's not a direct name, tat, if you say that, it doesn't define it. It's not a regular noun like house, car, tree, butterfly, because it doesn't specify. It's just a pronoun in the sense that it just sort of generally points something out. It's demonstrative in a sense because it's saying that. So when you say that car, it means you're indicating something. You're specifying which car it is in a general way. So therefore, and same thing in tat, tat's exactly the same. So in Sanskrit, in philosophical Sanskrit, tat, because it's a demonstrative pronoun, means in philosophical Sanskrit a real thing. Because you can't point out something that doesn't exist. You can only point out something that actually exists. And therefore, if something is truly tat, it's not a false tat, it must be a real thing because you can point it out. You can demonstrate it. And so, therefore, and it's used in that way as sort of shorthand. The Sanskrit scholars, I mean, way back thousands of years, they love to reduce the number of words, like say things in the least possible number of words. And this led even to the composition of like super condensed language, which is called sutra, like Vedanta Sutras. In fact, the word sutra is related to English. We have English words from that, like suture, because sutra means thread, just the thread of something. We have the word suture, which means to stitch a thread. Also the English word sew, that's all sutra. But in any case, tat, twa means the state of being something. Like, for example, twa is the same as English ty. Like generosity is a state of being generous. Or felicity is a state of being happy, felicity, happy. Or, and so on and so forth. So, tat twa means the condition or the state of being that. In other words, the state of being a real thing. So that's what tattva means. It's a very important word in philosophical Sanskrit. It's used a lot in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. So tattva doesn't just mean truth in the sense that something which is truth. It actually also means a fundamental category of reality. A real thing, a real object. And it's understood that in our philosophy and in general, in this Vedic philosophy, that there are basically three real things, or three categories of real things, which, and the word tattva is used to indicate these. There is, for example, Vishnu tattva. So that's why now if you understand what the word tattva means, when we say Vishnu tattva, it means Vishnu as representing a category of real things. And in this case, the category is God. The God category, in terms of a category of things that actually exist. The God category. And the category of individual souls is called Jiva Tattva. Again, called Tattva because it's a categorical truth. It's a category of fundamental truth. And ultimately, there's Prakriti Tattva as another fundamental, irreducible category. So, Nirvishesha, what it actually means is not making distinctions, proper distinctions among the tattvas. In other words, you confuse Jiva and Vishnu. You think an individual soul is God. Or you think God, when he comes to this world, is an individual soul. Or you think that you are your body, which is a category mistake. You're confusing Prakriti and Jiva. And if you think Krishna's body is material, that's another category mistake. You're confusing Vishnu and Prakriti. So basically, Nirvishesha means you don't know how to make categorical distinctions. And when Krishna says in that famous verse, Tadvidhi, know that, and those who have knowledge will give you knowledge, because they are Tattvadarshina. They have seen the truth of the fundamental categories of reality. That's actually what they've seen. So that's what Krishna is talking about in the Bhagavad Gita, by the way. He says, learn the truth. So going back to Prabhupada's pranam mantra, it's amazing at my age, I actually remember what I was talking about 10 minutes ago. But anyway, I'm impressed. So when we say nirvishesha, Prabhupada's nirvishesha shunyavadi paschatya desha tarine, tarine, another interesting word, and I'll put all this together, put the puzzle together. The Sanskrit verb tur or tara means crossing. And from the same root, you get the word tirtha, which is a crossing. So a tirtha, which is often translated sacred place, literally means a place where you cross from the material realm into the spiritual realm. And so the Sanskrit word tirtha literally means crossing. And tirthas get established when a divine being crosses down. It's like when a divine being crosses down from the spiritual realm to the material realm, that crossing opens up a channel, and wherever the divine being lives, that channel is there so you can cross back up. Therefore, it's called a tirtha. And the word used, the literal word, when a divine being crosses down into this world, of course, is avatara. Because ava means downward in Sanskrit. And avatara literally means, so the word avatar literally means a down crosser. In other words, someone who crosses down from the spiritual realm into this realm. And so in doing that, in crossing avatara, in crossing down into this realm, the avatar opens a channel between the two realms, the two dimensions of reality, and you can cross through there, you can upward cross, and that crossing is called tirtha. That's what the words mean. So, getting back to Paschatya Desha Tarine, the word tara, tarin, means the one who takes you across. The one who crosses you. Like when I was a little kid, there was a safety monitor that crossed us when going to school. They have these people that cross you. So that's what tarin, and then unto the crosser is tarine. So we bow to Prabhupada, who takes us across from the material realm to the spiritual realm. And it's translated, who saves. I mean, who's saving the Western countries. Paschatya, of course, means Western. Paschat in Sanskrit means the direction west, so Paschatya is Western, from Paschat, west. Desha means land or country, from the Sanskrit root dish, which means a direction. Like, for example, Lord Chaitanya defeated a great Pandit who was called the Digvijayi Pandit, the direction conqueror. In other words, he conquered all directions. And so that's dig or dish. And so from that Sanskrit root dish, direction, you get desha, which means a land, a place, a country, which is in a particular direction. I mean, we use that. We do the same thing in English. For example, we talk about the West. He's going to the West or to the northern lands or something. So Paschatya Desha Tarine, the one who takes the Western lands or the Western countries from the material realm to the spiritual realm, crosses them. And he takes them across by saving them from nirvishesha shunyavadi, the illusion of all kinds of really profound category mistakes, which means you can't understand God or yourself or nature, basically anything. It's kind of like, complete loss. And shunyavad. Shunya in Sanskrit means empty or void. So shunyavadi means a voidist, someone who's advocating the void. I explained this, I think, last night, that Buddhists historically did not believe that nothing exists. That's not what we mean by voidism. In fact, the Buddhists called themselves the Madhyamikas. Madhya is just English middle. That people who take the middle path precisely because they rejected the void. They rejected the idea that nothing exists. And they also rejected the idea of an eternal soul, despite the fact that the Buddha never denied the eternal soul, by the way. He actually never said there's a soul. There's not a soul. That's another topic, Buddhism. But in any case, and there were early Buddhist groups in India soon after Buddha who argued there is a soul. History has forgotten that, like the Pudgalavadis. But in any case, so what does it mean to advocate the void or to advocate emptiness? What are the Buddhists really talking about? Because after all, Mahayana Buddhists believe in heaven, or paradise, and bodhisattvas who come down to save people, giving them their own residence in heaven. So basically Buddhism, by the way, became a world religion, not with all this one-hand clapping nonsense, which, by the way, this is the sound of one-hand clapping. But in any case, if you look at the history of Buddhism, it became a world religion by emulating normal religions, talking about saints, saviors, going to heaven, becoming free of your karma, saving your ancestors who were trapped with bad karma. That's the Buddhism that became a world religion. This kind of, fancy Dan, one-hand clapping stuff, which is marketed to basically educated white people in the West that had bad experiences with the religion they were born into. That's not the Buddhism that became a world religion. In fact, Buddhists have deities, which look a lot like Krishna. Anyway, so you can see they have altars, they have deities, they worship the deities, they want to go to heaven, they want to be saved by their deity. That's the Buddhism that became a world religion. So anyway, what did they mean though? What were they talking about when they said Shunyavad? What they meant was, which is really something we could agree with up to a certain point, is that if you look at this world, everything is in a constant state of flux. For example, the body you walked in here with is not the same body. I mean, it's roughly the same body. But just every time you've been here, you're breathing out, and as you breathe out, you're breathing out certain anatomical elements. You're breathing in. There are incredible microbiological processes going on in your body right now, and not only like digestion and just a million things going on in your body right now. And so it's not the same body you walked in with. So that idea that the Buddhist idea of void is you can't point to anything in this universe that is really that thing. Because if you say, well, my body, but which body? Because at every moment it's a different body, technically. And if you look at anything, if you look, for example, let's say this microphone, which seems to be pretty, solid metal. But even the metal, I mean, if you're a metallurgist, they're perhaps at a much slower pace, but nonetheless, inexorably, even this metal object is changing at every moment, interacting with the environment. However slowly it is. So, I mean, there's some truth in the Buddhist Shunyavad idea, and Krishna says the same thing in the Bhagavad Gita. For example, in chapter 8, he says, Adhibhuto ksharo bhava, that the governing principle of material things is that they're always changing. So that's right there in the Gita. The problem is, if you don't understand, there is something in this world that never changes, and that's the soul and God. So even though, let's say, we go through so many fluctuations, mental changes and bodily changes, ultimately what you are as a substance, as an eternal spiritual substance, that never changes. That's what Krishna says in the Gita. He says that prakritim purusham chaiva vidhyanadi upavapi vikarang cha gunang chaiva vidhi prakriti sambhavan. That he says that both nature, physical nature, material nature, and the soul are beginningless. However, nature, material nature, is always being transformed. Vikarang cha, transformations, and different qualities, gunas. But the soul, as a substance, never changes, eternally the same. So the flaw in Buddhism is not that they teach that there's really a void, which they don't. It's that they don't understand there are permanent, unchanging, eternal objects even in this world. Which actually most Buddhists believe anyway now, because that's why they want to go to heaven. So Prabhupada is Shunyavad, but still, that Shunyavad, that idea that, I mean, you find people in the Western countries who say that It's in a Beatles song. Nothing is real. Strawberry fields forever. Nothing is real. Obviously, John Lennon had taken too much of something before he wrote that song. So Shunyavad means denying that there is an eternal soul in the body, denying there's an eternal God who pervades this world. So nirvishesha, shunya, whereas the impersonalists accept there's a God, but by the time they get finished explaining it, it's not really a God at all. But they think they're accepting some kind of God. So nirvishesha, shunyavadi, paschatya deshacharni. So Prabhupada is saving the Western countries and these things. It's very significant that Prabhupada uses the word Western. Some people say, for example, like, why Krishna West? Why not Krishna North or South? Maybe because there's no such thing as Northern culture. Maybe because there's no such thing as Southern culture. That could be a good reason. So if you look at history, going back to the earliest history, the first recorded contacts, really historical, documented evidence we have of serious contact between East and West. This has always been the division, East and West. Goes back to the great wars between the Persian Empire and the Greeks, because that was the boundary. That's where East met West, right there, between Persia and Greece, because the Persian Empire extended all the way to Turkey, which was the border of Greece. So, and then you have Alexander. So there's always been this distinction, East and West. Rudyard Kipling said, East is East, West is West, never the twain shall meet. So to say that when Prabhupada says, it was a very bold thing to say, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent a book to McGill University in Montreal, and Bhaktisiddhanta wanted his disciples to preach in the West. They really couldn't get the job done. He brought them back before they hurt themselves. And so Prabhupada not only went to the West himself, first great Vaishnavacharya that goes to the Western countries, and when he wrote his own Pranam Mantra, because there's no one else to write it, he defines himself, he characterizes himself as a savior of the Western countries. Of course, he got his order from his guru. So this is extraordinary. Prabhupada did something very, very extraordinary, and I was walking with Prabhupada one time in Rancho Park in Los Angeles. We were literally walking over the baseball fields where I used to play. That was very strange. I used to ride with Prabhupada in the car. We'd go past all these really nice houses where I went to parties when I was young. And then we go to the park where I used to play sports and walking with Prabhupada. So walking with Prabhupada, and what was the story I was going to tell you? That what was the point for that? Got absorbed remembering that.
Western countries.
Yes, we were walking with Prabhupada. Yeah, thank you. We were walking with Prabhupada, and there's kind of been a pastime in ISKCON going way back. It's sort of like a competition to see who can most effectively denigrate the Western world. And as if you could simultaneously denigrate someone and attract them. You can, certainly can get a good following from masochists, not other people. So there was one brahmachari who was walking there, and you have to understand that the morning walks with Prabhupada were really almost the only chance that most devotees had in ISKCON to really talk to Prabhupada. Because he would give classes, after class he went back to his room, and he would meet with leaders because it was just humanly impossible to meet with everyone. But on the morning walk, that was in a sense the most democratic moment in ISKCON in terms of access to Prabhupada. Because you could kind of push your way in and ask a question before anyone could stop you. And so this young brahmachari, book distributor, went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I'm going out every day and saying kirtan, and these Americans, they're really demonic or this or that. It was like, real tough love there. And Prabhupada actually stopped him, and Prabhupada said, no. He said, they're not bad people. They're not bad people. They don't have knowledge. You have to give them knowledge. There are other statements from Prabhupada. It's not a question, this is paraphrasing Prabhupada very closely. It is not a question of East and West. It's not that in the East everyone is good and in the West they're bad. Another reference, Prabhupada, one of the things Prabhupada used to say when he first came to America when he was in New York, one time I was a little ill by Krishna's arrangement, and I spent like a whole day or 2 days just listening to all of Prabhupada's lectures in New York. I joined in California, you know, where the most cool devotees join. Anyway, so wish they all could be California gurus. Anyway, so I was listening to all these New York lectures. And there was an example that Prabhupada used to give, which is very interesting. Prabhupada would say that in America, in your country, there are many really amazing things, really good things. But without Krishna, they're all zero. But if you put the one in Krishna in front, it becomes a big number. Now, unfortunately, I think many people have forgotten their elementary school math. Because let's say you write the number. Is it possible to maybe not ring the bell? Like silently? Is that possible? Without the bell, just silently. That's what you mean. I mean, Krishna will really be happy if you do that. So, Prabhupada, so if you have the number 1,000, you have the number 1,000 and you add 1 0, that 0 actually has, the value is 9,000. It's not 0, it's actually 9,000. The next 0 you add is 90,000. The next one, 900,000. So when Prabhupada said there's all these zeros, put the 1 in front, what he was saying is there's extraordinary value in many things in the Western world. Just a reminder of, you know, elementary math. One time I was with Prabhupada we picked him up at LAX, Los Angeles Airport, and the devotees rented this stretch limousine for Prabhupada. And so I was in the car with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had landed in extremely foggy weather. I mean, there was such thick fog, you could hardly see anything. And Prabhupada was really surprised. He said, and so in the car, he asked us, how could the plane land with all this fog? And one of the devotees explained about radar. And Prabhupada just laughed, and he said, in this material world, there's no happiness. But if there's a little happiness, it's in America. And there may even be more in Australia because it's like America without all the without all the guns. So exactly. So Prabhupada, he would make a very strong critique of the material world. But Prabhupada, Prabhupada once said to us, he was advising book distributors, and he said, if you want to convince an important person, you have to flatter them. Like he probably gave the example, sir, you are very intelligent, so please take this book. So the simple fact is, whether you like it or not, even if you're one of these, leftist self-loathing white persons, the fact is that the Western world, for good or evil, is actually leading the world. That's just the way it is. The West in general has the most prestige. Australia, I can tell anyone anywhere that I'm going to Australia, and I always get the same reaction. Oh boy, I wish I could go there. So Australia has people really see it as a very positive place. Like, I wish I could go to Australia and so on. So when you're trying to convince people who have a certain importance in the world, like I said, whether you like it or not, they have a certain importance in the world, you try to flatter them, not denigrate them, not insult them. And Prabhupada, I can think of so many times because I was born in America, that Prabhupada praised America to me. And one time I asked Prabhupada if I could go preach in third world countries, because I had a college in certain ones, not just in general, can I preach in third world countries, but certain ones. And Prabhupada really liked my college program in America. And so his response was, which kind of worried me, he said, yes. He said, we can preach in heaven or in hell for Krishna. And I thought, my God, what does that mean? And so Prabhupada often used judo on us in the sense that, because we were young and passionate, and boys were always coming to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, can I do this? I want to do, and so Prabhupada sometimes when he saw that we were just like a little overheated, he would say yes, and then we'd calm down, and then later he'd tell us what he really wanted. So Prabhupada kind of did that with me. I asked Prabhupada if I could go to these third world countries, and Prabhupada said, yes, we can preach in heaven and hell. And so then I thought, okay, I got to get a passport, I got to do this and that. And the next morning, I went with Prabhupada, sat next to Prabhupada in the car. We were driving out to Venice Beach. And the entire way there, down Venice Boulevard, the entire way to the beach, like about a 15-minute ride, Prabhupada was just hammering me about how important America is. I came to your country. I came to this country because America is the most important country. If America takes Krishna consciousness, everyone will follow. He just went on and on like that. And so finally, when he went on like that until we stopped at the beach, and the driver, Prabhupada's driver, turned the engine off, and of course all the boys came rushing up to open Prabhupada's door. And so before Prabhupada got out, I said, Prabhupada, if America's so important, maybe I should just stay here. He said, yes. And so I remember one time I'm talking about America because that's what Prabhupada aimed at me. When Prabhupada came to Australia, he talked about Australia. But I was sitting in Prabhupada's garden one time in Los Angeles. He looked at me, and there were some other devotees there, and he said, what is the use? What is the use of your being in America if you don't do something wonderful? So in other words, Prabhupada actually appealed to our nationalism. Because even though you're a devotee and I'm not this body and I'm not this, I'm not that, the point is we still have our human nature, down there somewhere. And people who are, I would say, just emotionally healthy don't despise their countries, assuming they weren't, like tortured and incarcerated or something. If you, unfairly, if you live in a really good country, which you all do here, those of you who live here, if you live in one of the best countries in the world, then first of all, there should be some gratitude. Frankly, without the Western drive towards a rational secular society, we can talk about the West is so bad because they don't have religious government. Well, frankly, it's because the West did away with religious government because religious government was abominable and was committing one atrocity after the other, murdering, torturing people, totally suppressing free thought. If it hadn't have been for the secular movement in the Western world, you could do Harinam anywhere in the world for about 5 minutes before you were, if you were lucky, you would be killed quickly. So there can be an international society for Krishna consciousness only because of what the West did. It's secularized society. Now, you could preach in India. India always had freedom of religion, actually. But to be able to preach practically anywhere in the world outside of India, that's because of the West. So the next time you feel that someone may feel that it's actually offensive to even put two words together, Krishna West, as if how can you juxtapose the most holy and the most disgusting and filthy? Remember that it's only because of the West that there is and could ever be an international society for Krishna consciousness. When Prabhupada, just before he left this world, there was a very famous moment where he was remembering with tears in his eyes. He became so emotional that he was weeping, remembering how his Western disciples spread his movement. And at the very end, he was trying, it wasn't possible, but he wanted to go back one more time to America simply out of heartfelt gratitude. So, now India, of course, runs on its own steam. Now India is like they're like Gulliver and we're all like the Lilliputians in terms of spreading the movement. But the movement in India was established by Western devotees, including many Australian devotees, because they get visas, Commonwealth thing. The Western devotees, including many Australians, built Mayapur, built Vrindavan, built the Hare Krishna land in Juhu. The Western devotees created, under Prabhupada's authority, built this movement, paid for the movement, spread this movement. And when Prabhupada remembered that, he had tears in his eyes. And the Western world allowed us to do that. Western governments allowed us to do that. When we were accused of brainwashing and all that. By the way, no one ever talked about brainwashing until Jonestown. That's when some preacher named Jim Jones, who at some point had apparently been like a sort of a normal preacher, he went crazy, he took all his followers out of America because the world was going to end. In the Hare Krishna movement, no one would ever talk about the world's going to end. So took all his followers to Guyana in South America. There were like 1,000 people, mostly African Americans, amazingly enough. And so one U.S. congressman, Jim Ryan, I think his name was, he went to investigate because they came from the Bay Area. He was a congressman in the Bay Area, San Francisco area, and his constituents were appealing to him like, my relatives, my brother, my sister, my children, my parents, what's going on down there? So he flew down there as a U.S. congressman and talked to Jim Jones and thought he had reached a reasonable agreement. But then Jim Jones obviously was, mentally very unstable. As this congressman literally was flying back, he was on the runway and they were taxiing down the runway. Jim Jones ordered him to be executed because they were like this fascist armed group, and they shot. They shot at the airplane, killed the congressman, killed the pilot, and when that happened, when you kill a U.S. congressman, not appreciated. And so at that point, the American government got involved, the Guyanese government got involved, and it was like totally game over for this crazy commune. So what they did is, knowing that it was totally over, they were finished, they had this drill, they had practiced mass suicide. And so we still don't know, we don't have enough evidence to know whether they did it voluntarily or they were forced at gunpoint, but they all took this Kool-Aid. Have you ever heard the expression to drink the Kool-Aid? That's where it comes from. They all drank this Kool-Aid, they all laid down, and then when the authorities got there, there were 1,000 dead people there. It was either a mass suicide or a mass execution. And at that point, it was at that point that the attitude toward new religious movements like the Hare Krishna movement radically changed. Suddenly, they were not just weird, they were not just kind of crazy, but they were a threat. They could kill our children. And the Western world, the people went crazy over it. You got deprogrammers. That all was a direct result of Jonestown. What year does anyone know? I'll tell you in a second. Anyway, you can look it up, but maybe the 70s. 70s, yeah. Because Prabhupada was here. So that's when all the brainwashing, deprogramming, it all started with that. What's interesting is that when it went to the courts in America, for example, time and time again, the United States judicial system defended the devotees, declared their right, and you have, for example, all these professional psychologists coming to testify on our behalf. These are not devotees, and they're testifying that brainwashing is a totally false concept. It has no scientific standing. According to psychology, there's no such thing. According to mental health science, there's no such thing as brainwashing. Professors from Harvard, from the Harvard Divinity School, came to testify. This is a bona fide religion. The whole, the American academic community mobilized in our defense. And the judicial system ruled in our favor. So that's the disgusting Western world. Not only that, just one more thing. I'm saying all this because Prabhupada put the word in his pranam mantra. He put the word in his, there are many things, say in Australia, which are more Vedic than other places, like, say, India. They may not know about Krishna, but for example, Australia and other countries like Scandinavian countries and other countries, New Zealand, certainly New Zealand, have the world's most transparent governments. In other words, of all the governments in the world, hundreds of governments, these are the governments that, to the greatest extent, actually govern fairly and actually spend money for the people. That is Vedic. That is extremely Vedic. When you have rulers who, to the best of their knowledge, actually try to take care of the people. The fact that in most places in Australia, you can walk down the street without fear. You can, there's a strong sense of the public interest. One of the main differences between third world countries and first world countries is that in first world countries, like Australia, there is a very strong sense of our duty to the public. In other words, you have to keep your house clean. You can't throw your garbage out on your front lawn. And if you're working for the government, you can't, it's not that, well, you're not my friend and you didn't bribe me, so I don't care what the law says. In third world countries, if you're not a friend of the bureaucrat and you didn't bribe the bureaucrat, you're probably going to have trouble with the bureaucrat. So that sense of public responsibility, public interest, is a sign of first world countries, and it is very much Vedic culture. And the third world tendency to just want to steal and bribe and take everything for yourself and your family and your friends, and the rest of the world can go to hell, and that extreme caste consciousness, that is not Vedic culture. It's not that the West is better than India. There are many things in India that are better than the West. But my point is, it's not that the West is awful and terrible and India is all perfect. India is one of the biggest meat exporters, beef exporters in the world. It has perhaps the highest rate of female abuse. At the same time, it's a land of Krishna. At the same time, it's a land of Krishna. At the same time, it probably has the highest level of Krishna consciousness. The West has all these nice first world things. At the same time, the West in other ways is barbarian and just almost unbelievably ignorant. And so my point here is that we don't have to bash anybody. We don't have to bash anybody. We don't have to become chauvinists, Eastern chauvinists. We can actually just state these things are good, those things are not good. Wherever you find these things, it's good, or those things, it's bad. And we should appreciate all the great things in the West. And that's what Prabhupada taught me to do, by the way. That's what Prabhupada taught me to do by his own example. Because when I think of everything Prabhupada said to me personally about America, it was almost always high praise. There's almost always high praise. What?
They want us to start the Guru Puja.
Okay, we're going to start the Guru Puja now, so thank you all very much. And I hope I could, I hope this helped. Hare Krishna.